everybody. This is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for another devotional. Today we are in John chapter 2. I'm going to read verses 13 down through 17, and I promise you're going to like this story. It's a good one. The Passover, so this annual celebration, the Passover of the Jews was at hand. Jesus went up to Jerusalem because you got to go up to get to it. It's on a mount. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons and the money changers sitting there and making a whip of cords. That's Jesus now. He made a whip of cords. He drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen. He poured out the coins and the money changers and overturned their tables. He told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things out of here. Take them away. Do not make my Father's house a house of trade." And then his disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will consume me." So during Jesus' ministry, just during his 3 years of ministry, Jesus attended all three Passover events. In fact, even as a kid, he never missed one. He was a Jew, so he went up to the Passover. And Passover was an annual gathering where followers celebrated God's deliverance out of Egyptian slavery. And all three of these events are found in John's gospel, culminating in the final Passover that Jesus celebrated in that upper room. You remember it? In that upper room right before his crucifixion in the last week of his life. Now, during each event, Jerusalem had at least, we think, 1 million visitors. And some historians project even more. But during the event, the city of Jerusalem was packed. I mean, there wasn't a place to stand or to sleep. And the focal point of the Passover was the temple grounds, to which families and heads of households would bring sacrifices and pay their temple taxes. So there's two things happening here: sacrifices being offered and taxes being paid. Now, some have estimated that during a typical Passover, about 250,000 animals would be sacrificed in a very tiny, short period of time. That's a lot of sacrifices. But it's clear from this story right here that something devious was up. Something devious was being done by Annas, one of the temple's high priests. Now, businesses that were formerly not allowed to be on the temple grounds were moved inside into the courtyard so that Annas could leverage them for his personal gain. They provided essentially two services, and we see those here. First, animals for sacrifices, because you had to bring a sacrifice, and some followers traveled so far that bringing an animal was far too cumbersome, so they bought one there. And second, bankers that exchanged money, because religious officials, Annas specifically, would only accept a certain kind of coin for the temple tax. They didn't want money with pagan symbols on it. And because people were coming from all over the land, they had all kinds of different cash with pagan symbols on them. And guess what? Religious officials didn't want that. So these two businesses right here, of course, made a killing because people were obligated by law to bring sacrifices and to pay their taxes, and they're extorting money from people. So some people dubbed this event the bazaars of Annas, like a festival bazaar that was selling things. So it probably looked like a market, right? Now remember that Annas was a very corrupt high priest. He was very unliked by Jesus, by the way. We'll see some interactions later on. But what he was doing here is extorting money from people using abusive commercial practices. And right here at this moment, you see Jesus, the angriest you're ever going to see him. And you're going to notice it's directed at corrupt religious leaders. How about that? Now, what Jesus is doing was kind of shocking as much as it was just, right? I mean, everybody knew what Annas was doing. I mean, he was intentionally doing it. And in the process, he was taking advantage of millions of followers, extorting, by the way, millions of dollars, easily millions, for an event that was supposed to be focused on God. But there's something iconic happening at this moment. You probably already caught it if you were paying attention. The Lamb of God, as John the Baptist called him in chapter 1, remember that title? He walked on to the temple grounds. Jesus, our Lamb, our high priest, was turning over religious corruption because religious men were corrupting a system that wasn't supposed to be corrupted. Now, don't miss this. If you're a little irritated about the things happening in the world and happening in the church, don't you worry. because Jesus is going to come again, and he's going to set things right just like he did here. This is just a preface to the great coming again, and he's going to deal with corruption at every level, whether it be in government or the church or in business, and he's going to set it straight. In the meantime, we've got to ensure that our hearts are always right with God, because we are the people that the just judge is going to come to set straight. And guess what? His ways are pure, and he's going to be right every time. So get ready, fellas, and get your heart right with God. I love you. I pray this has blessed you. If it has, share it with someone else, and I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.